A reading from the Gospel of Mark. Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple, and when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see whether perhaps he would find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. He said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. Then they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling and those who were buying in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves, and he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. He was teaching and saying, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations,' but you have made it a den of robbers?" And when the chief priests and the scribes heard it, they kept looking for a way to kill him, for they were afraid of him, because the whole crowd was spellbound by his teaching. And when evening came, Jesus and his disciples went out of the city. In the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Then Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly I tell you, if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and if you do not doubt in your heart, but believe that what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses." And so we find ourselves in the Monday of what we call Holy Week, the Monday and indeed the Tuesday. Jesus has come triumphantly into Jerusalem, visited the temple, and then he curses a fig tree for doing only what it was supposed to do. It wasn't the season for figs, therefore there were no figs, but it gets cursed nevertheless. And then Jesus goes and curses the temple for doing, in a sense, what it was supposed to do. There's a lot to think about in this passage. Mark is usually fairly literal in the way in which he recounts the Jesus story. The fig tree is an exception to that. It's hard to think that Jesus was genuinely angry with a tree behaving exactly as the season would suggest it behaves. But we see here, of course, something about a redundancy of purpose, a new beginning to do something so much more God-shaped, something which the crowds find unbelievably attractive. They are hailing Jesus as Messiah. He has come to Jerusalem with people cheering him on, and they are spellbound by his teaching in the temple. It's no wonder it gets up people's noses. St. James Cathedral is not open for someone to come in from outside, someone whom I barely know and who will stand up and start preaching a different message to that preached by myself and Lisa and Anna. That's not how it works, and it's not how it worked in the temple either. But Jesus has something not only new, but better and more godlike to offer. And the crowds recognize the authenticity of Jesus' message, and they recognize the implications and the redundancy for the old way of doing things. Religions are not very good with change. Those of you with long memories may recall the changes from more traditional right one, thee and thou language to the more modern language that we're accustomed to using now. We have seen other changes come in, the introduction of women as deacons, priests and bishops, and there have always been those who don't like whatever the change is. We hope and pray that the changes we make in the life of our church make us more godlike, more Christ-like, more focused on God's mission to the world. Certainly, that was Jesus' principle. And it didn't go down well. And of course, the crowd are fickle, and we know how quickly in this story, in this week, the mood changes and the events take a very grave turn for the worse. But Jesus calls us to hear the truth about God's love, whatever the cost may be, whatever the cost may be to ourselves and to our institutions, including the church. As we hear this vitally significant and symbolic story, both about the fig tree and the temple, we need to pray that our gaze, that our attention is always focused on being godlike and Christ-like in our life and in the life of our church, that we may truly have something vital and important to offer the world and all of God's children. Amen.